Good morning. This is Professor Birge. I thought we'd just take a minute and review two websites for what you can tell by just taking a visual inventory of the site and from which you can determine whether it's really credible or not. And this is really the first thing you should do when looking at a new website that you may not be certain with. So the first place to look is the URL. And WashingtonPost.com, pretty simple, pretty straight up. And fake websites very often try to have a URL that will trick people. And one that was very popular a couple of years ago, and the site doesn't exist anymore, was abcnews.co.com. And people would find this website, they'd Google ABC News, and this, as well as others, would come up. And it was a fake website. It had a logo very, very similar to ABC News logo, but it was full of falsehoods and distortions. And people got tricked to going to it, to clicking on it, which certainly helped them monetize the site. But you want to look at a URL to make sure it at least appears legitimate, as this one clearly is. The other place to look is just look at the structure of the website itself. If this is a news site, it's going to have a certain look to it. And one of those places is to just look at the headlines. Are the headlines biased? Do they show bias? Are they all in caps? Is there advertising on the front of the page all the way around? If you look here, we have a banner ad for the post, but as we go down, we don't see anything coming down the side. We don't see anything in the middle of the pages. As we're scrolling down, we're not seeing anything. What we're seeing is a lot of news stories with appropriate sized headlines. Right. We don't see anything in caps. We don't see bias words. I'll show you a website that's definitely biased in a little bit. So those are two things to look at. First, the URL, and then just the layout of the page. And you're looking for excessive advertising. Most websites have this kind of banner ad. All of them do, news sites, to help pay for it, clearly. And so the URL, the headlines, the layout of the paper. Another place you want to look is for an about page. And usually if they're not right up at the top, you'll find them at the very bottom. And if we scroll down to the very bottom, we have About Us for the Washington Post. And so we have a link to their public relations if you want to reach out to someone in PR at the Post. They have a link to jobs. They have a link to diversity and inclusion. So if you're looking to see what the Washington Post is about, there are plenty of places to get information. So look at the URL, look at the About page, look to see what kind of ads they have, and look to see if they're selling a book about the website. Look at the headlines, if they're different sizes or different typeface. And then look at the organization of the page of the website itself. Is it organized? Is it disorganized? And we can see here, this is very organized, right? So let's go to one of my favorite, which is All News Pipeline. And if we apply the same rubrics that we just did here, one of the things we can say is while they do have a banner ad as the Post does, they also have a series of ads down the side. There's a mortgage ad, more about selling descent pins, these aren't ads. These are just filler. There's no link here. Something about learning how to use WordPress. So this is how they're really trying to monetize their page. There are ads all over. Okay. If we're looking at how this is organized, what we see is that it doesn't look like a traditional website for news. There are no photos here, for one. They do not have a layout that is traditional. They just have a list of stories, one that falls into the category of news, and another falls into the category of alternate news, which I guess is like alternate facts. It doesn't really exist, or it's someone's idea of what might be news, and another with another perspective. I'm just not sure. But this is not a traditional layout. It doesn't have any of the things that a traditional website would have: photos, graphics, everything that seems to be opinion driven. The headlines are all the same. There's too many ads, way too many ads. If we take a look at the About page up here, the best mix of hard-hitting real news and cutting-edge alternative news on the web. So I'm going to take alternative news to mean fake news. And this is what we know about them. We at All News Pipeline believe that any and all information should be revealed for readers to decide for themselves, to debate it, research more, and even discard it if they so choose. Unlike the mainstream media, which seems to believe they should decide what the public should or shouldn't be told. All News Pipeline will cover straight news topics such as economy, politics, current events, health, technology, religion, as well as alternate news, which will include prophecy, Illuminati, and all things conspiracy. So they're being very upfront about it. They're saying, we're going to give you news, but we're going to give you fake news too. What we will do is keep those categories separate so the readers can click the appropriate tab and get only what they're looking for. And they have their IP address and their mailing address, which is in McHenry, Maryland. You can make directed donations using this web link. And apparently these are the volunteer writer. They have one writer and the owner. That's what you get when you look at the About page. And that's pretty common with many fake news sites, is that they'll, when you click on the About page, they'll just be upfront with you and tell you, this is put together by, two people in this state, and they'll be pretty upfront about it. If we look at the Internet Registry, there's a registry for all websites in the country. It's called the International Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. This is an important way of, first of all, keeping track of all the websites. And also it's used by law enforcement for investigations against racism, sex abuse, kidnapping, all sorts of things. And so they can track down who owns the website, where it was created. Here we have phone numbers. This is the Washington Post's information. So it says who the company is. It gives you phone numbers to contact them. Gives you a mailing address. They created their own website. And just some very basic information. If we look at the same site for All News Pipeline, we have their registered domain. We have the date it was created, which was in July of 2014. And we can see that this website's going to expire this year, or the registration for it. I don't know if they have to re-register or what, but here this is an expiration date. Their mailing address, remember the writers were in Maryland, the mailing address is just Montana. I don't know how they get away with just listing Montana, but they did. And they bill Montana. They created the website using GoDaddy. This is the abuse contact phone number. I think it's for GoDaddy because the email is for GoDaddy. So you don't have nearly as much information as you do with the Washington Post. If I were to try and track them down, it would not nearly be as easy as the Washington Post. And here we have the two people who are named, and that is Kate and Kevin. And that's the only information we have on them. So, not very thorough. If it was legitimate, they'd have a lot more information, unlike the Washington Post. If we go to a link explorer, this tells us a couple of things. If we look at domain authority, this is a number that tells us that shows us how Google ranks the sites. A higher number means it's likely ranked better on Google. So this domain authority number is 58. It's not very good. If we go over to the Washington Post, they have a domain authority of 94, which means it's going to rank much higher in a search. If you look at page authority, this is it for the Washington Post. It's a score that was developed by this website that predicts how well a page will rank on a search engine. So anything above 60 is considered very, very good. And then if we look at On News Pipeline, theirs is 50. Right? So the Washington Post is going to be ranked very high on a Google search. And these two figures will demonstrate that. So the inbound links, we have inbound links. Here we are. Inbound links. Okay. A linking domain. So there are 855,000 websites or pages that link to the Washington Post. So what that tells you is that the Washington Post is a credible news site that many, many other sites link to. They link to the articles, they link to the opinion columns, they link to the editorials. They just link to all sorts of places on the page. And so this is a place where other websites will basically tell their readers, go read more here. If we look at All News Pipeline, their linking domain is 5,000. And since there are billions of web pages on the internet, we know that this is a really low number and that it's not a credible website, in that other pages are not linking to their stories. They're not sending their readers there to get more information, to get context, to get a further explanation. So that these are various ways to find out more about a web page. And just to take a look at, again, a web page and what you can just look for to determine whether or not it's credible is, the URL, the headlines, the organization of the page, whether or not there are excessive ads, and the about page. And if you just make a really very cursory look through a website that you're new to and that you're not sure about, that very brief survey will establish a lot of information for you. Okay, on we go.